you can find images where it's represented, like a reef, or sometimes he will be presented as like a warrior Santa with like a horned crown. Those are rare to find, but this is all connected. So you see, if Krampus is a representation of the god Baal, then Santa Claus is a representation of Krampus. And this always involves children. And we of course know the legends of him coming down the chimney with the red sack, presents under the tree. All that was kind of like rewritten from the original Krampus story, because they enter our world all the time. You pretty much coexist with them. It's just that you can't see them. You can't physically touch them, or, but they can physically touch you. The clock is ticking now.
So check this out. This is the voice of the South, Q Smitty. Make sure that you guys check out FyaahTV. They bring it at fire, baby. Make sure that you subscribe, like, comment, all that, because if you're not doing that, you missing out on some great fire, baby.
Welcome to FyaahTV. Today we are joined by a special guest, Jay Woodward. We have a Christmas special. We're going to be talking all things Krampus, and we have lots more, including some Bible verses that we're going to get Jay to discuss with us. Welcome, Jay.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How's everything?
Yeah, it's coming up to Christmas, so even if you are not involved in the festivities, they are all around. 'Tis the season to be jolly.
'Tis the season.
So what have you been up to? Do you celebrate Christmas?
I would have to say yes and no. I think I explained this one time before in a video, whereas I have my background is Jehovah's Witness. So in other words, I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, but what they would call a Bible student. So I was actually trained into baptism in their congregation.
Mm-hmm.
But I took a lot of their teachings and things with me as I moved along with my life. Holidays was something that they just didn't participate in. However, they did have, on occasion, you would see people gather just the same. Their families would get together. They would take advantage of those holiday off time periods, So for me, as a child, I would still get gifts from other relatives who participated, from friends and family. And that experience I grew up with over time. So for me, Christmas was always this, I could take it or leave it type of thing. If I was on my own at any point, it probably wouldn't happen. It wasn't on my mind because it was everywhere. You know how it is during the holiday seasons. Every place you go, it's everywhere. So you're not going to miss it. The time with the family, you do miss at times, but normally if I go into someone's house, that's fine with me. If they celebrate Christmas, I'm cool. I don't participate in a lot of the, like singing songs and things like that. I try to deter from doing that. Gifts, I do still give gifts to my relatives, to friends, family. But yeah, that's how.
Do you ever have a tree? Like, do you have kids?
I have kids, but I don't do trees. Not in my house.
Obviously, because when you find out the origins of these things, I think I stopped having a Christmas tree maybe about 5 years ago. But because of the kids, I don't want them to miss out too much. So I kind of wait till Christmas Eve, put it up, in the morning they see it, and then I have it straight back down again. I was like, there it was, and it's all part of the surprise.
Yeah, that's normally the excuse for when
The
the
kids. Do it for the
kids,
kids.
that's the kind of the thing that happens when Halloween time comes around.
Well, Halloween is still a big no-no for me, but
Right. So, there are certain things that are part of Christmas that, I'm just not, it's not that I'm not cool with it. I just don't participate in that function of it. I do like, what feels good to me is fine with me. I pray on it, but, if I feel good about giving someone gifts or them giving me some, usually, it's just, that's just how I feel and just what I want to do at that moment. But the whole Christmas tree thing and the decor and all that, the lights, it's just, it's at this point, it's mostly just thematic and traditional, aside from, its origin meanings.
do you have Christmas dinner?
If I'm invited to, but normally no. Thanksgiving, sometimes like Thanksgiving, I visited my sister, so I'll do things like that. I'll go to someone else, but usually at home, it's just another day. But it never works out that way for me. So, I have a daughter, so, when Christmas comes around, it's mostly gathering time for my family,
And obviously we have the famous Father Christmas, who is our icon of the festive season. Have you heard of Krampus? Do you think that's where his origins come from?
No, Krampus is it's an old Nordic tale. They are related, but there's different regions, of course, within Europe. So even just across the border, it's going to be a slightly different tale, and over time, it's going to progress into something that's more religious related, versus Krampus is more of a fairy tale, based on like real life, ancient characters that have truly existed at one point. And then that gets turned into this ritualistic traditional ceremony that they hold each year, even if they have to use mock characters. And it just gets turned into this commercialized theme, which we now call Christmas.
Yeah, and it's become more and more commercial, but obviously it started with a more spiritual, I guess, religious meaning behind it, in terms of it being Jesus' birthday and stuff like that. How do you feel about the church sort of taking over that holiday?
What do I think about the church taking over Christmas?
And labeling it as Jesus' birthday?
Oh, most of what the Roman Catholic Church has done has been for government policies and things of that nature. It isn't, from what I see, they're more deeply involved in the political fiasco rather than religion or God, for that matter. So that to me, that was strictly political. It wasn't anything to do with the birth of Christ, if they even care about that. So that's how I look at it from the as an institution. Nothing against Catholicism or Christianity or anything. These institutions tend to get blown up and empowered to the point, and especially in ancient times, that was the power source right there. in Egypt. This is an ancient Egyptian concept. All these things go back to Egypt, and it all goes back to these deities. This is why the Roman Catholic Church is like it's an impression of those old kingdoms, the old Greek, the old Roman, the old Egyptian kingdoms. That's what the church is. If you want to look at it as, you know, as an institution.
Do you think more people who are in these sort of religions, Christians, should know about the history of it rather than just getting taken away with the holiday?
Yeah, they should have some awareness. You know, if this is something you're going to live with for the rest of your life, you should know something about it. You know, it's kind of like taking prescription drugs that you don't know what's in it, but you've been taking them for 5, 10, 20 years. You have no idea what it does or how it's made or anything like that. So, you know, you could be blindly poisoning yourself. And so it's for me, you know, of course, I'm a follower of Christ. I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe he was a real person sent here to accomplish exactly what I explained to my viewers in my videos. So a lot of people realize that, they know that about me. And so, you know, that's where I base my principles on, you know, not with, you know, what the congregations base them on.
So, for example, in Halloween, they have the jack-o'-lantern that they put outside, and some of the folklore behind that is that it is an invitation to it sort of invites demons. Some say that it repels demons. What are some of the Christmas traditions that have this kind of folklore behind them?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like the mistletoe, the holly and the ivy, the Christmas tree itself.
Yeah, in Celtic, in old, during the times of like Celtic worship and pagan worship, for, you know, when things got really crazy and they started worshiping deities and actually started to, you know, sacrifice humans at certain points in time. And this goes across the globe, actually. That's why I say, like, old dark Egyptian magic and rituals, you know, that aren't really put out there in the front. All that stuff goes back to Egypt. They used to worship a god named Baal or Baal, and this was another horn deity. And again, with the horn deity is very significant throughout time. It's mostly just a symbol of power. So, but that's, you can relate. That's why you see Krampus with the horns. Okay, Santa Claus doesn't have the horns, but
Unless he's hiding them under his hat.
well, yeah, you can find images where it's represented, you know, like a reef, or sometimes sometimes he will be presented as like a warrior Santa with like a horn crown. Those are rare to find, but this is all connected. So you see, if Krampus is a representation of the god Baal, then Santa Claus is a representation of Krampus. And this always involves children. And we, of course, know the legends of him coming down the chimney with the red sack, presents under the tree. All that was kind of like rewritten from the original Krampus story, where you have bad kid gets coal, or he might get kidnapped and eaten, and you know, the good kid, it was, I guess, I can't remember what the gifts were at that time, but they had certain gifts to give people. They weren't like you just go out and get whatever you wanted to get. They had the gifts they gave people meant something. That's one of the things that was probably the best thing about the whole Christmas scenario that is completely lost now. So giving a gift that meant something, that, you know, was useful to somebody, that wasn't, you know, that was more of a thought, that was more symbolic than, you know, a pair of socks. But, you know, yeah, probably people don't know that those things are connected. And so when you engage, see, the problem is, and even ex-occultists will tell you this, a lot of these holidays that involve children are actually like a way to get children spiritually connected with dark entities. So what parents are doing is they are actually bringing their children into a spiritual place, a spiritual existence and experience, because that's what these spirits have done since man. So, you know, they've had this all set up and all running over and over and over, year after year, because they know they don't change what they do. They don't come up with new ideas. They just keep doing the same thing because it works.
So you think, obviously everything is like about energy siphoning, I guess. With the spirit of Christmas that is created, do you think there is it's like a big siphoning time of the year with all the excitement and elation?
Absolutely. Even like Halloween is a big spiritual time of the year. You see a lot of things occur right around that time period, you know, the harvest season. This is more like a darker season because of the changing environment and the weather. People more.
It's the shortest day of the year, isn't it? It's the equinox, so it is the darkest time of the year, I guess.
Yeah, I would say it's often one of the most unpredictable times, but you usually don't see the results of that until, you know, early next year. Christmas and New Year's tends to be pretty calm, pretty quiet, aside from, you know, local incidents and events. You know, even weather-wise, you know, Christmas can tend to be pretty mild. It's after that, you know, come January, February, where it gets a little bit, especially with politics too. So it's like, you know, with things going around with this experiment, you know, it's it just keeps going and going. It's like, I'm actually, you know, I'm still researching it, but I'm actually getting tired of it, because it's like a movie, it's like a TV series that keeps going, but the TV series sucks now, so you don't want to watch it anymore. But they won't take it off the air. So it's like watching a horrible TV series, because you know a lot of it is fake. What they're showing you, a lot of it is fake. Most of it is fake. What's actually going on in your real existence, that's totally different. If you were to go around and start testing people, if you were to go around and start experimenting, you would have different numbers. You would probably not even find what you would find other things, and probably not what you probably wouldn't even find what you were looking for, but you would find other things.
Do you think celebrating Christmas is worshipping? Well, you do. You think it's worshipping another entity, and you think it goes back to Baal?
Well, it's not necessarily. It's not. You're not really worshiping any one deity unless you're praying to the God, you know, through Jesus. So, but everything else that it involves, it encourages spirits to come around. So, you know, that's what you're dealing with. You're just bringing in that energy. And
No, so that's why it is called the spirit of Christmas then. They've told
right,
us.
right, you're bringing in that energy. Some people think it's holy energy, but you know, you're doing a lot of things that you're not supposed to be doing. You know, it's big time idol worship. You know, and that, you know, it's you know, bringing a tree into your house every year, decorating it and everything. You know, it can be fun for people, and that's how a lot of people see it. Once you're aware of certain things, and I guess I'll have to address it. Once you're aware of certain things, you know, it's no longer, you no longer perceive it the same way. And so, you know, it's just not something that I partake in, because I can enjoy the day all the same, just as much as the next person. But, you know, without that medium there, without having the lights, without having the music, the tree, the gifts, you know, just having people, for me, just having people around, you know, a lot of times it would just be a short thing, and I'd be out. Like in my younger years, I used to be out. I was out the door. I'm going to go party. That's what a lot of these holidays get people in the mood to do. It gets them, you know, revved up. And
Is it linked to Saturnalia?
I'm sorry?
Is it linked to Saturnalia?
I'm not sure.
I think that because that was a time of, you know, debauchery, drinking, child sacrifice, and I think it was around the same sort of time.
Yeah, there is another, how should I say it, subtle theme to Christmas. Like you mentioned it before with the mistletoe. So, you know, yeah, it's, you know, I could say the same thing about Easter. Easter is a time of fertility. Yeah, there's a big sexual theme behind Christmas.
Yeah.
That you don't see with Valentine's Day. You know, and that's you know, that you would think that holiday is reserved like for couples and romance and all that stuff, you know, Valentine's Day. But no, Christmas is a heightened time of year.
Max.
So yeah, and you can see it if you know, you can see those little, you know, themes every so often in that world of Christmas. But you know, it's very subtle.
Yeah, it's been very diluted now. If you had to pick one Christmas song just before we end this segment, is there one that just always gets in your head regardless?
Oh, Carol of the Bells.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah. I you know, I love the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Yeah, I love music like that. I love orchestral, big, epic type productions. Yeah,
that is a good one.
Yeah.
The other one I like is A Spaceman Came Traveling, Krista Berg.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on to our Q&A section. Here we go. What do you want your subscribers to gain from the content you upload?
Encouragement to due diligence. I can't teach people awareness or how to be safe or awake or any of that stuff. I try to say, hey, look at this. You know, there's a few interesting things about this, and I'll talk to you soon. And you know, that's pretty much what I want to give a message. So it's like sending a message. That's why I keep it short. I want to format it so that I can go longer and have interaction with my audience, but I like to send messages, and I think that those hit a lot harder than, you know, going on and on and on, where someone can get complacent with that.
Yeah, I definitely think that your content is for people who want to gain more, you know, so it's like you give them a little bit of water, and it's like if you're still thirsty, you can go and do your own research on that, which is great. But when it comes, you know, you've got so many interesting topics. When it comes to going deeper into it, where do you think the best sources are to look for some of these pieces of information?
So when it comes to researching topics, it's good to know people. So if you know people who are experts in certain subjects, you always go to people first. So people who you know, you go to them first. If you know doctors who specialize in certain areas, you call them up, or, you know, you write to them, email them, whatever, but you talk to them first. That's the best, your number one source of information is other people you know. Second, you want to go through, if you're looking at news articles, usually the first article that was published is usually the most truthful. So you start there, because after that, after the story gets out, every other story is different. You can't rely on any of the numbers. You can't rely on who did what, the names of people. They get all mixed up. People make mistakes in writing. So, you know, and plus people form agendas after some period of time. So, you know, when they hide stuff in the beginning and then it comes out later, it's hard to trust if that's even accurate at that point, especially with all the conspiracy theories going on after every single event that occurs. So you have that side too.
So obviously when you go on Google, Wikipedia, all of these things, what do you think of those?
Google there's Google, and then there's what I use, DuckDuckGo, or you could use Gopher. Those other two sources are not as likely to suppress information or news that comes out. Google has a habit of supporting money. Excuse me. Excuse me. Yeah, Google has this habit because they have so many sponsors and advertisements coming through. That's what's on the front. And that's why you get fact checking up front. And that's why you get, because the fact checkers are there for the advertisers, not there for, because they want to suppress information or anything. No, all that stuff is for money. So when you're on Google, Google is a very commercialized. So it's kind of like if you wanted to go get truth or information, that's like going to the History Channel for it. Okay, it's going to be very watered. You know, the History Channel is not really controlled like that, but you know, in terms of what they can do. But of course, they got to allow you in the door first. But yeah, that's how that's how it is. It's going to be very watered down and diluted.
Yeah. Okay, so it's DuckDuckGo and Gopher.
Yeah, they're better at not suppressing all that information. And the way Google does it is they just kick the information they want to the top. You have to go pages and pages deep.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever looked past the first page of Google.
Well, what happens is when you start to look deeper and deeper into those pages, all the information starts to change. So it becomes something else entirely. So that's the problem with that. So unless you know an IP address or a website address, the information coming from those sites is just not going to get into the Google search. So
Mm.
you're just going to have to find another route. And I usually use, for articles, I'll go to like DuckDuckGo or Gopher. Gopher is, I would go there. Well, I would go to Google last. I would start with DuckDuckGo, Gopher, and then Google, whatever other search engine you can find to
That's
use.
very
I
helpful.
find
Thank you.
I find DuckDuckGo to be pretty good.
So what is a typical life in the day of Jay?
I'm up at 7 a.m. I'm in my work area here, and I start writing. I start writing, I start researching, and I go like that all day pretty much until I get it done. Sometimes it carries over to the next day, and then the next day. If I'm not doing that, I am. Well, these days I'm in the gym a lot more, so that's my time. There, groceries, home. That's it. I don't go out. I'm not out in venues like that, or anything like that. So I'm I'm pretty much focused on work at this point, especially since lockdowns. Even before lockdowns, I was used to just being inside. So, it wasn't a big change for me, but it was still frustrating, nonetheless, because I still had to go out and run errands and take care of business, and it slowed me down a lot. So, but I got a lot of work done. I got a lot of research done. I got a lot of information, a lot of opportunities, a lot of experiences. So I get to communicate with a lot of different people, which keeps me busy a lot too. So I think that keeps me busy the most is, correspondence with, people that I work with and, my audience.
And do you believe in the multiverse?
I'm not sure to what extent, but yes, I do believe there is a parallel plane that is in existence at the same time. So it's not like, so stepping through a door is basically an inversion. So you're inverting dark matter to light matter. So you would consider us, our physical being, as light matter, inverted into dark matter. Now you're in that other plane. Does that make sense? Or, it would be the inverse of this.
Yeah.
Okay. That's how I would look at it. Within that,
would that be what people would describe as the spirit realm?
yeah, you could put it. Well, yeah, I could. Well, honestly, I think where spirits exist in this plane, I don't think there's like there is a boundary to, because they're spiritual beings. I think the boundary is placed there by God. I don't think there is actual physical barrier that separates us because they enter our world all the time. We pretty much coexist with them. It's just that you can't see them. You can't physically touch them, or, but they can physically touch you. So, is that something coming out of another dimension back and forth? When I think about it that way, I'm like, I'm not really certain that these things are moving in and out of this other dimension. I think they're just here within our plane of existence, within this dimension, except that because they are a different being. They're spiritual. You know, it's a different experience for them. So they could probably, so that other dimension that does exist, they probably have that ability to pass into that inverse, that other dimension, or multiple dimensions, if it might be that case. But if that's the case, then that's probably not another dimension, but probably another part of space-time. So somewhere in another part of the universe.
Mm. What do you think dreams are?
I tend to think dreams are well, they're like a, you know, if you look at it scientifically, a lot of people will say it's just your mind going through repair, your neurotransmitters repairing themselves, and you know, it has to dump information out, and it has to get that stuff all organized. A lot of it, I think, also has to do with you releasing energy during your healing phase in sleep. And so the images you're seeing are, you know, are just manifestations of that energy that was kind of locked in, you know, before you were sleeping. And I also think that, I think it's a way to send messages, divine messages, because most people who, if you look into ancient texts, a lot of them had divine messages sent in dreams. They would often have to have people come and interpret dreams because they knew that they meant something. They knew that, you know, these were, you know, they were serious about whatever they were dreaming about. Even today, people do the same thing. We still look at our dreams as, okay, what was that message? You know, you try to break it down in your head. If you do remember, you do try to break it down and see how it relates to your real world. Because even to this day, I've had dreams about, and you may experience this yourself. I've had dreams about people who that I've never met. Can't remember meeting them ever in my past, ever, or, you know, so, or seeing them in person anywhere. So what that makes me think is, this somebody that I will eventually run into, or will this be someone I see on television? You know, because your brain is actually creating a character that has their own personality in your dream, isn't it? It's very strange, very odd. And this person doesn't exist in your reality. There's a lot of things that your mind creates that you were never there. Complete structures, architecture of places that you've never seen before, plants. I don't remember having too many dreams about animals unless that was like the focus. But yeah, definitely structures and things like that. So dreams, you know, what they call like the Akashic records, or, you know, that resonant frequencies and things like that. Sometimes I think those can get in as we sleep, maybe because your subconscious is more open to external stimuli. So if the frequencies are, you know, that's why oftentimes you may have people who are related having similar dreams, or people, you know, in close proximity. So, you know, there's different, you know, there's different theories about.
And it's so weird because, like, sometimes I've looked up, you know, say there's a red vase or something like that, and then you look up what the meaning of a red vase is, and it will indicate something that you actually are feeling, but you would have never associated that feeling with a red vase, for example.
Absolutely.
I find that very strange. Yeah, dreams definitely have symbolisms in them that can give you, I guess, divine direction. How do you feel about the metaverse?
The metaverse? Yeah, I just discussed this. So
Mm.
what it is now, it's not something that, none of these things are something that we're going to see in place right away. It's going to be like cell phone technology. Right now, you just use it. You don't know how you ended up using it. You could probably go back in time and try to figure out, like, where was your start when it came to using a cell phone, or where was the start when you started using applications on a cell phone. You probably can't remember the first application you ever used. So we're just going to end up in this after they develop it to the point to where it's comfortable. Because right now, I can tell you, it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable for people. Right now, people are still trying to adjust to what their cell phones can do. You know, with these new applications that are coming out, and the new technologies, the biometrics, the 15 different cameras they have now on the phones, and you know, it's becoming like it's becoming very very interactive, to the point where they want it to make it so that you're going to have a hard time disconnecting from it. And that's why people do have a hard time disconnecting from their phone, because of everything that it does. If it was just the phone that you talked on, you wouldn't see people walking around with these things in their hand, because that's not what people use them for. So now that they've worked all that into their life, when they make this switch over to virtual reality, augmented reality is already a thing. Once you're able to apply that to people, where you have facial recognition, where your cell phone can recognize a stranger's face, when you have that capability, you know, a lot of things are possible at that point. So because it's a network and it's moving super fast, and so they're going to have that capability, and you're going to be able to rate people, you're going to be able to categorize people. So as soon as you know, and it's going to be a very weird thing to do, to have cameras, or to have someone walking around with a camera and they're scanning you and looking at your stats. So that's going to be very, I mean, it's going to be a weird thing, but imagine that, you know, someone wearing something that looks like, you know, Google Glass or anything, you know, similar, and they'll be able to read that, you know, all that information when they look at you. You know, it would be less obvious.
Have you seen the series Black Mirror?
I haven't watched it too much, no.
It's quite
I've heard,
freaky.
I've heard
Yeah,
that.
they have things like that with the eyeglass. It's basically a series that shows how technology could be taken in its extremes, I
Yeah, we
guess.
absolutely have, like, you know, those old sci-fi movies. We definitely have the capability to make all that cool, those cool looking screens and all that stuff. You know, that's just aesthetics. That, you know, the actual techno, like what they can actually do is they're way ahead of us when it comes to that. This stuff is just for fun for us. And you'll be able to see, like, the wearable devices, like the watches and like the Fitbit devices, they're measuring biometrics. So, you know, it collects data on your mood. And then, you know, once that gets to a point where they can gauge your mood, they can tell, like, when you wake up in the morning, what mood you're in. So let's advertise coffee. So, you know what I mean? Let's coffee. It's early in the morning. He likes coffee. We know this. Or, you know, so, and he's in that mood. They'll be able to know if I have that craving. They'll be, you know, the algorithms and the AI that's involved in this, is they've thought of everything. And they've thought of ways. And so once you put on that VR headset, it's almost like you're now, it's not just like a video game anymore. You're actually now going to, it's now become like an appliance, like an accessory, something that you're going to need once you start engaging in it. Once you start putting your information, your credit card information in there, and you start doing your banking in there, and you start doing your grocery shopping, and you start talking to people through that thing. Once you put on those glasses and you're like sitting in the room, we'll do an interview, and we'll put on the headset, and we'll just have like the camera, we'll just have the scene, and it can actually look like we're in. See, that's actually a cool part about it. The problem is if when you have such a connection to it that you can't, if it's gone, you can't, that's going to screw up a lot of things. So I don't think it's a good idea for people who are not looking at it as a monetary investment to just, in moderation, I'm not against technology. Like, everybody as a kid has always wanted these things to exist, and now that they do exist, we all complain about it because of what what it's doing to our health, and it's reasonable. So with that, you have to understand, you don't have to make these people rich. You don't have to, just because you don't have to support their idea, we can still live the way we're intended, which is, to keep ourselves in this natural state as much as possible and not try to transcend to this cyborg state. Existence
And
too.
sorry, what do you think about the witchcraft idea behind black mirrors, and then the phones being made of like a black mirror, kind of scry mirror?
Yeah, I haven't looked too much into mirror magic. I think the concept here is that it's more of like a solidification of like a reflection. So once you see what's in front of the mirror solidify, it kind of goes with intent. It's not so much, in certain houses, right? Maybe really, really old houses, mansions. If you've ever been to a really old mansion, you go in and you'll see sometimes they'll have mirrors, right? And sometimes they'll have mirrors in certain locations. Depending on, the history of the society that lived in those houses, sometimes those mirrors were placed there to keep spirits at bay. They're put in certain locations. So if you move those mirrors, bad things would start to happen. So there is like there is like a portal type of effect that happens. But like I said, these things already exist in our plane. So I'm not really sure what's going on there when it comes to mirror magic or portals or things like that. But I do know that it's supposed to represent some type of solidification or some type of like parallel you or something like that. But like I said, they've been used as means to control spirits, I guess you could say. Which is part of vampire lore. They can't be seen, in the mirror. So, the mirror does play a role. I have to go and dig deep into that. Of course, that's a pretty good topic to discuss.
And with obviously Facebook Portal came out, it's called Facebook Portal. Do you think that these electrical devices can sort of open doorways in people so that they can sort of travel in and out, or do you think they're already doing that? They don't need these devices?
No, they can do that. They can do that through television. You know, that's been their main source for years. Like all this other stuff is supplemental, but they have been using television to accomplish all of that for the most part. You know, music's subcategory of it, but for the most part, television, because that's the airwaves that they control. And that has more of a profound effect on people than, some of these other things.
Have you heard of the organic LED TV that has organic material in it?
No, I haven't researched that yet.
I think that's like the new. I heard about it. I don't know if it's real, but it's a TV that has organic material inside it. It's meant to give a better screen quality. But it did make me think that that would be somewhere that an energy could sort of latch onto within the TV.
Yeah, what they're finding out is the more advanced they get with this technology, they're realizing that biologically having something biological included into it, to make it work better is the key. So what they're finding out with AI systems right now is that they actually need a brain. So every computer, all these quantum computers, everything they're doing right now is still nothing in comparison to what the human brain can do. So they're thinking, okay, so we need to make this biological. We need to make a biological machine. So that's what they're working on right now. They're working on, synthetic type of organisms, organic type of organisms. They're trying to grow computers in a sense.
Where do you draw the line between esoteric and new age practices? And what I mean by that is, for example, in one of your last videos about the bineuroenergetic synchronization technique, I had a look into it, but I'm not sure, what's ancient and what's new age, what's okay, what's not.
Anything that involves spirits, pretty much. That's your rule of thumb there. So anything that involves you communicating with spirits is a no go. Okay. Like tarot cards, that was like a game, But the moment you start asking spirits, which is pretty much what a medium does when she's giving you a reading, you're communicating with spirits. So therefore, now you are bringing those things in. So anything that has to do, it doesn't matter what it is, okay? Anything that has to do with communicating with spirits, that's the issue. So, Ouija boards, for example, you can have a Ouija board. Just having a Ouija board in your house does nothing. When you start to use it to communicate with spirits, then you have an issue. You see, it's just like if anything. Like none of these things. These are just objects, and they have nothing without the intent behind it. So I could have, for example, like I can't remember their name. There's a couple. They were the couple that was featured in the movies The Conjuring.
Oh, yeah.
So they live around all types of haunted objects. None of that stuff bothers them because there's no intent coming from those two. These spirits, what's the point of just trying to get at them? So they pretty much leave them alone, I guess, But other people, when they have these things, they're more vulnerable. They don't know what's going on. So you take one of those objects and put it in someone's house. Now all hell breaks loose because it's a different person. And now that spirit can actually do something, couldn't do anything to those two. They didn't care. They knew what was going on. So there was no point. It's not like they have to haunt people because you do. you did a ritual, so now it's haunted. No, it doesn't work that way. They kind of do their own thing. They do what they want to do, or they don't do anything. Sometimes none of that stuff works. Sometimes it does. They don't do anything. Some people could play with those things all day and it does nothing. But it's not really a safe thing to do, because sometimes you don't see, it's kind of like an incubation period. Before an infection, you get the infection, and then it could be weeks, months later before you even see any symptoms or anything like that. So that's also a possibility.
And for example, in like Indian cultures, they will use someone's birth chart to test someone's compatibility. And then in the westernized society, we have horoscopes and sort of daily ability to access demons and what they think your day should look like. Do you think there's a difference between the birth chart and horoscopes, or is it all in the same thing?
I mean, it's all based on the same principles, astrological principles and things like that, seasons and times of the year. And all that stuff is basically, it goes back to ancient times where people were trying to measure these things. That's what's the whole point of astrology was. They try to keep track of the stars and try to take measurements and to say, okay, if this is here at this point in time in the season, then we can expect snow. We can expect, they learn these things over time to take measurements. And so what you end up with is birth charts and compatibility tables and things like that, because there's a science behind it. And if sometimes people don't advance on that science, so it kind of stays the same. So in the modern age, we don't need star charts for compatibility. Okay, we've got cell phones, we've got email, we've got all these means of communication, whereas before you might meet 2 or 3 people in your life, a few people that are compatible to you within your day-to-day life, without a vehicle, without all these things. So if you keep trying to use those same methods to form, to measure your compatibility with, or anything in life, you're using an old primitive method. It's just not, it's not logical when we have all these different advanced technologies to do the same thing, you see? And so that is where you have the spiritual side to it coming in. So now people are thinking, okay, there's something spiritual to it. If this is not just all scientific, if I can, know how my day is going to go based on the technology I have right now, but not on a horoscope, then, I'm thinking logically here. But if I go to a horoscope, there's something mystical and spiritual about you wanting to do that. So, there's a separation there. It depends on your intent and what you're using it for. And so, yeah, there are lures, and spirits use these things as lures. So it gets you used to wanting more information. So it teases you, and if everything goes right, you're in the next time. And they just keep pulling you in further and further and further by anything they can. They'll throw anything they can at you, just pull you in. And they have all the time in the world. That's all they have is time. So they have no problem waiting 10, 20 years to get you. They could sit in the corner of your room. You'll never know they were there ever for 20 years. And that one day you bring something in the house, or you had that thought, or you wanted to read this book on some magic or something like that, anything, they're gonna jump on it. And they're gonna try to use that to get you. And they're like, got you. It took me a 40 years to get you, but I got you. You know what I mean? And that's when the cycle of breaking you down starts. And that's why you see, like, you can always tell, like, when people are into these things, deep occultists, people are really deep in the occult, you won't be able to tell those people. People that are like Wiccans, you know, females for the most part, you'll be able to tell, like, yeah, they're into the new age type of thing, you know, tattoos, whatever, piercings, all that stuff. The, you know, the even the garments worn, the jewelry, all that stuff are dead giveaways to, yeah, you're into that at some degree, at some level, you know, or you have been, you know. So but like I said, it's only at the point where you start communicating with spirits, you know, or praying or honoring deities, calling out their names, you know, that's when things start to happen.
Have you ever heard of the concept of archons and demiurges, and do you think they relate to the 7 deadly sins?
So the only, well, I'll tell you this. Some of negative emotions like anger are that's the name of a demon. So, you know, with that said, you could, you know, when it comes to like the sins, they're like demons. They're actual demons. So that's why when you it's hard to explain, but you know, it's kind of like when God put an angel in charge of each little thing, you know, to regulate that thing. It's kind of the sins are kind of regulated that way as well. So, you know, it's kind of like when you sin, when you feel, or when you have greed, you know, that's kind of like worshiping a demon. You're representing that demon. That demon has possessed you, that spirit. If that makes sense. That's the best way I can describe it.
Have you seen the film Eternals? The new Marvel?
The Eternals. No, I haven't seen that. No, I think I stopped. I think once Robert Downey Jr. snapped his fingers, that was it. I was done. And so since then, I haven't seen anything Marvel.
Oh, really? It's quite interesting. It was very unexpected, but it's about these beings that are born in the earth, and it's very vivid, and it would be
Fallen
interesting
angel
to hear.
stuff, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, with all the gods and, you know, the Aphrodite, and but you know they're always the heroes of the day.
Yeah, some of these offshoots of the main comics, you know, they're just ridiculous stories. People try to, you know, offshoot, and then they rewrite it and try to work it into the current universe. That's why you have all these different universes and things like that. But it's not, you know, I think they're using it now to try and set up something in the future with the new these new movies that they're making. And I think there's some type of aside from Thanos, I think there's like Galactus or some other beings out there that they want to try to build this thing up again and to have like a big Avengers type of movies, you know, towards the end there again. So and it looks like they're, you know, willing to take their time to do it. But as far as that, you know, that's just, you know, more. I think we're going to see more and more of these types of movies where polytheism and alternate deities are being, you know, kind of in the placed in front. So we're just going to keep getting more and more movies where these gods come down to mess with things, you know.
Do you think we'll see Judgment Day in our lifetime?
Well, that would be within our lifetime. You still got another, what, 50, 60 years to go for the most part. So possibly, possibly. Some things have to happen first if you're going according to biblical texts. So you have to look for those chain of events leading up to that. So if you start to see some of those things occur right now, it's very hard to gauge, you know, the time period from when it starts to when it ends. And that's what's really hard. I think that's what a lot of people are trying to figure out. It's like, you got to figure out when this first event occurs, but it's not even really clear what the first event is. So it could be a few things, because it doesn't, you know, even though it's kind of chronologically listed, they're not numbered. Like, this is going to happen first, this is going to happen right after, this is going to happen, you know. So we kind of look at it that way, and we try to gauge, okay, what makes logical sense, okay? And so from when the point it starts and when, you know, till Judgment Day, you know, you're going to have, even if it's a number of years, you still have enough time for it to reach to that point from the point it starts. So, you know, it could be, yeah, within our lifetime, if not within the next generation.
And what Bible prophecies are yet to be fulfilled?
Oh, what have yet to be fulfilled? Almost the entire book of Revelation has yet to be revealed. You know, like I said, you have to try and figure out what aspects of, like, you know, that prophecy is occurring, or is in the making, or, you know, is in the works. But I think it's going to be pretty apparent, you know, when we're in the middle of it. We may not see it begin. It's beginning right now, but I think an event has to occur first, and I'm kind of waiting for one event to occur to give me, okay, you know, the clock is ticking now. So once that event occurs, you know, just be on, you know, code orange, or, you know, from that point on, you're going to have to live your life. In fact, everyone's going to have to live their life that way from that point on. We are kind of like in a code orange with, or yellow with the experiment and everything, you know, everything that's going on. So once this event happens, we have to be, now we're going to be living our lives pretty much for the rest of our lives in this heightened state. You know, that's a meteor impact. So, you know, once that occurs, we're going to be, which is soon.
Yeah. Have you ever had doubts in your spirituality or on your spiritual journey?
No. I've looked at so many different religions and spiritual concepts. I'm fine with what I believe. Yeah, I'm pretty good. And a lot of things have confirmed that I think I'm on the right track when it comes to that.
What would you say makes you so firm in your convictions?
Just the confirmation that, you know, from the research. This is why I encourage people to just do their own research and read things themselves, because some things can be presented as dark. It's like, it's not really dark. It's just that, you know, that's how it's presented. You got to read through it to see that, okay, there's really nothing dark here. This is just, you know, and so you see a lot of things related, and some things are just a retelling of the same story over and over again, and it's the same people. So, you know, to separate the cultures and to believe like they're believing in something different because the names are different, it's just simply, it's not true. They're the same deities. If it's polytheistic worship, it's the same deities. If it's monotheism, it's usually the same deity. It has different names. Sometimes that can be tricky because you also have Satan, which is a deity running around trying to pretend to be God. And so that causes a lot of confusion.
Because obviously you do touch on quite a lot of dark subjects, like the Discordia and, like the Emerald Tablets. Do you read these texts, or do you just research about them, or do you actually read into it?
Yeah, I try to read through them. Sometimes it's very tedious because you have to, because when you start reading so many different texts and they're kind of written the same way, now your brain's every time you come across something that your brain says, okay, I've seen this before, now I got to go and research one word. So I'll spend 2 hours and that will lead me down a rabbit hole, so to speak, and you'll just keep going deeper and deeper into this one thing, finally getting back to the scripture or writing itself. And then you could either have a better understanding, a moment of clarity when you reread it, and then or what happens a lot is you'll notice that, okay, this is the same thing as this person said. Thoth and the Emerald Tablets, this is the same person as Moses. Is this the same person? You know what I mean? So you see, when you start reading these different, even like ancient Vedic texts, you start going through those. It's a different language, but you can get like translated versions. So when you start reading those, you see like, okay, this is like a lot like with the Chinese, in far East Asia is like, what their culture and what their beliefs are. So you see like, it's simply just culture and tradition that just perpetuates across the globe, and it gets changed. It gets, altered somewhat to fit society's values and their traditions,
And what's the most shocking text that you've ever found or come across?
The most shocking, probably the Book of Enoch. I would put up there next to the Bible. One that surprised me was the Quran. The Quran is surprisingly similar to a lot of these, but yeah, I would just have to say the Book of Enoch, because.
And is there a specific text, like a specific piece of information that you just found bizarre?
Yes, the whole fallen angel story is missing from the Bible. It's not there. And so you lose that thought when you read the whole Bible without that there. You see? So everything that happens without that context, it's completely different. When you have that context from the Book of Enoch in your mind, when you're reading through the Bible, there's a lot of things that you'll find are missing. Like, okay, I have all the filled in blanks that I need to know what Nephilim means. You know what I mean? When it's just briefly mentioned, so you wonder, like, okay, it's not so much a matter of what was taken out or put in it. What's there is there. Okay, so it's kind of like we do have all these other texts to go on where the stories are the same in a lot of cases. So you can back that up on other texts, especially the Book of Enoch.
And you said you read the Quran as well. Did you say that?
I've just started to look into that. Yeah, I find.
And you said it's very similar to which book?
The Bible and the Book of Enoch, like a lot. It's very similar. It's like I said, it's like a retelling. It's a different. It's a telling from a different prophet in a different time period, in a different place. So whatever information he was receiving, that was written out. It's very similar.
And what do you think that means? Because obviously people can have really strong convictions in their religion as a Muslim, their religion as a Buddhist, their religion as a Christian, Jehovah's Witness. They have these really strong convictions that this is the book that's right.
Yeah, that's the religion, not the doctrine book. The doctrine is completely separated from the religion. So it's just like with Jehovah's Witnesses. That's the religion, and then you have the doctrine, which is the Bible. Okay, the Bible doesn't change, the religion does. So, or the culture. So the doctrine is always going to be the doctrine. So whether you're Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Hindu, when you pick up the Quran, it's just the Quran. You don't have to be any sect or religion to follow it or believe anything in it. It doesn't have to, or take
So
values from it.
do you think they're still divinely inspired?
Well, we can't tell if Moses was divinely inspired. We don't know that for sure. We weren't there. So none of that can be confirmed. None of that whole canon, inspired by God, can be confirmed. And people need to accept that as the truth. That's the truth. You cannot confirm that is the case. So what you have to do, that's why faith exists. So when you have that faith, that's what you're running on. And some people have, it's just the way that we were brought up with it and the way it is structured. It's just like, yeah, it has to be inspired by God, if anything. And so I tend to believe that myself. Like, yes, this is inspired. It's not like which is different than dictated. You see, if it's dictation, like the only person that I know of that God spoke to directly was Moses, but not really face to face. But he was the only one that he would directly speak to, and he said that. Everyone else, it would be through angels, through dreams, and such. So, yeah, I do believe that that's the case.
And you mentioned before about Thoth and Moses. Is there a correlation between those characters?
I came across something that suggested that they were one and the same, because you got to remember where Moses is coming from. He's Egyptian / Hebrew. So yeah, that makes sense.
Very interesting. Have you ever witnessed a miracle in your life?
Besides my daughter?
Yeah.
You mean something like maybe divine intervention or of the sort, something of the sort? Oh, my thing, my plant fell.
Was that a miracle? Of course we're real.
Glad you said that, right? No, I can't say that I have seen any, I can't say that I've seen anything in real life that I would consider to be a miraculous event,
Do you think it's important to be baptized?
That I'm not too sure about. I'm not certain about that because of the world we're living in right now. So
How do you feel about abortion?
yeah, I'm not with that. But
Do you think it's linked to ritualistic practices?
well, I mean, right now it became a business. you know, people found a way to exploit what was going on, and it became a business. And you know, once you there's nothing people won't do once you start letting them do it. So that's why we're at this point, and you know, at this stage where, you know, it's happening, and people don't want it to keep happening. They want to, you know, it's going to get to the point where, you know, you're not going to have to worry about it anymore, because no one's going to be able to have kids. So, you know, if that's the route people want to go, you know, that's it. It's not the first time because it was occurring in the days of Enoch, where the fallen angels were actually teaching women how to do this. So it wasn't, you know, it's called smiting the child. So, you know, they smote the child, and so that's where we're headed. We're actually already there. So we're already like, we've already been defiled. We're there. So what happens from this point on is, yes, everything that's going to occur in the book of Revelation is going to play out. And, you know, people just have to have an understanding that anything you do, you will be accountable for. You know, you will be, you know, it's just a point of knowing who you are. And from a certain point in your life on, you know, you have to start living, like I said, you start living to improve yourself and be the best human you can be. And that's pretty much what it's going to come down to.
Do you think it is possible to be rich and famous and still godly?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think like there's I believe there's a few people who are really, you know, who are very wealthy, who do, you know, are all for God. You know, it's not, I'm not just talking about like evangelists or anything like of the sort, but you'll know when someone is blessed because of that reason. You know, they're going to be blessed with abundance. You got to think about who God blessed and what he blessed them with. You know, it wasn't like, I'm going to bless you with a plate of food.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to give you gold. I give you women. I give you all types of, you know, spoiled people. if you were for him, you know. So yeah, I believe that.
Have you ever been approached to join the Illuminati over Instagram?
No, nothing like that. No.
Bit of a random one, but apparently they want me in their club.
Yeah, secret societies usually like to do that in person, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I just thought it was quite funny. I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, and they won't just come up right up to you. They'll befriend you first and get to know you first, and then they spring it on you. Sometimes they have methods of biometrically finding people. You know, they have technologies where they can find people who are at a certain vibrational level, and they can find these people and they can say, okay, this guy is meant to make lots of money and he's good for as a member. So, you know, they bring him on. Those guys usually stay in and go to the top and become, you know, rich. So they can genetically find who's compatible to be in their club, you know.
Have you ever been approached about the content that you upload on YouTube?
Aside from viewers, no.
Do you get in trouble with YouTube over any of the content that you upload?
No, usually everything is cleared through YouTube. The only issue I ever had was when I promoted a Schedule 1 regulated, which is CBD, which you can't promote to sell through YouTube.
I will.
Yeah, I can talk about it. I can, talk about the benefits, of it and everything like that. But once I start to promote a sell for it, then, you can't do that because Schedule 1 still regulated substance. But that's the only issue, and I got a warning for that. And that was the only issue I've ever had from YouTube. Other than that, you might get like, copyright issues where, a photo or a video clip was used that, you take that out, or, audio track or something like that. Aside from the normal technical issues, no, they've never approached me about content, the content and what I was talking about or discussing, anything like that. And I'm usually pretty good about avoiding that. And so where you may see other people struggle with that, there's a reason why I format my show the way I do, so that it can get through, so it won't be blocked and suppressed. So.
What's the biggest obstacle that you've faced in life thus far?
Biggest obstacle. I would say is conquering my spirituality, like grounding myself spiritually. That is the number one struggle, I think, in my life ever. So like, because it's going to be the thing that separates you from being a good person or a bad person, And so, finances, are problems for several people that goes up and down throughout life. Sometimes you have a good long period, and sometimes you have a, long low period. And relationships, you can struggle with breakups and, things like that. Physical injuries, you can recover from those. Being spiritually grounded is like a lifetime struggle, because there's always that uncertainty, that little tiny bit, if you are doing the right thing or not, And so throughout your life, and you don't really question if you are worshiping the right God or not. It's just kind of like, sometimes you have doubts about yourself and how strong your faith is because of what you engage in regular everyday life. So yeah, you struggle with like sins, and wanting to please God and worship God. So I think it should be everyone's biggest struggle, because now you're struggling against something that you can't really see. It's based on faith. There's real things in life that you want to do, you want to experience. And, so you have to ground yourself spiritually so that you can maintain that composure and posture and be that person that God wants you to be. And so that everything can work out correctly. So this is what I think a lot of people are struggling with. And that's why they have all these things around them it's coping mechanisms to, because they just don't have that grounding. They just don't have that security.
We're going to just discuss a few Bible verses just to kind of gauge your thoughts on them, if that's okay, for the last segment. So firstly, if Adam and Eve were the original humans, and the verses that they were to go and populate the earth, how would they have done that? Because the only way would have been through incest.
Right. That's exactly how they did it.
Why was that allowed then? And wouldn't that have messed up the gene pool to begin with?
Yeah, so everything works on God, what he wants to happen. So if realistically, you can't, if you have man and a woman. So you have to take the genetics from the man if you want to have a copy, genetic copy that's going to work. You can't make two separate beings. It's because they're going to be different. So at least that's my logic on it, you know, so, which is why he took the rib from the man or the genetics from the man to create the female counterpart. So when you have these two, of course, that would be considered incest, because would be like his sister in a sense, you know, but that was allowed because it had to occur in order for them to populate. Now, once you get to a certain point, you have to spread out. So in order to make people spread out, no more incest. So God did not allow it. In fact, if you try, it's going to lead to birth defects. You're not going to have, it's just not going to take. That generation is not going to survive. Mm-hmm. So you have to spread out now. And so that's why that occurred. So at a certain point, and I can't remember, I think it happened twice. It was after the flood. It was during Adam and Eve's time period that it was allowed. And then I think it was before Noah's day that he stopped it. I can't remember when, but no one was allowed to do that anymore at a certain point. And after the flood, he allowed it to happen again. And then he cut it again. He said, no, can't, no more incest. You've got enough people spread out, and people didn't want to do that. You get the whole Tower of Babel scenario taking place. And so that's where you have the whole incest thing.
In the book of Enki, they talk about them sort of making sort of more test tube humans. Is that happening parallel to Adam and Eve because they're copying it and trying to replicate what God did?
Yeah, that sounds like a story of the fallen angels trying to replicate what God was doing. Yeah, and that's kind of telling when you think about, like, you know, like how were they able to breed these children, and you know how many of them were bred. You know, did these women have daughters as well? You know, which is weird to me, because those things aren't, I don't really hear too much of that mentioned. Although you do have, in certain stories, you do have male and female giants. So you have that possibility as well. So depending on what story you're reading, you know, yeah, I could see that. I don't think it was like what we use is, you know, test tubes and things like that, you know, to that extent, like, you know, a modern day laboratory. But it could have been something similar in a sense. Just the way it was told is very child book like. It's really told in a child book type of manner when you read that story, Sumerian story. And so you know, and the Bible doesn't read like that. The Bible doesn't read like it's a child book, but the Sumerian text, it's very, like, I don't know if it's the way they translated the text, but it seems very, very simply put, very fanciful, and the context of it, you know, is just like a science fiction writer wrote this, you know, so it's not like the Bible. It doesn't have that same setting or feeling that it does, you know, that strong spiritual feeling. So, but it does sound like bits and pieces of the same story. So, you know, I don't know really what's made up when it comes to, you know, Sumerian lore and what's not.
Okay, so we're going to go to the next verse. So Genesis 6:4 says there were giants in those days and also afterwards. Do you think Adam and Eve were giants?
No, I don't believe so. you know, there's a lot to suggest that, but no, I don't think they were giants. The reason I believe, because people have this theory, is if you're going to live to be 1,000 years old, at what point do you stop growing? You know, so for humans, really, when we stop growing is once our cells have reached a level of maturity where everything is fully developed at that point. Because once you start out with a two cells pretty much, and then that multiplies to billions and trillions, and you keep multiplying those cells up until your age of around 25, 28, 30. Around that age range is when your cells stop multiplying. And so now you're you're considered fully grown at that point. And then afterwards, now you don't make as many cells as die off. The ones that die off become more and more. That's now called aging. So at what point did Adam reach his potential with cell growth? You know, where it was, you know, necessary for him. I think he was pretty tall, strong, structured individual. Like when we think about, I don't think he was a super Hulk type dude, but I think he was, you know, good stature and pretty tall enough, you know, to pass down a lineage to get all these different types of people we have today. So yeah, I think you would have to have like a very strong genetic.
And do you think Adam and Eve were before or after the ancient trees were cut down?
The ancient trees were cut down. No, they would have to be before. But you know, there's another theory about the canopy. So you have this, because you have these huge trees, you have just, because of the branches and leaves, you have this canopy. So you're basically in a dome, you know, in those days. You're not seeing the sky like we see it now. You're just seeing this dome where you have light trickle in. And so it's like, you know, like in the rainforest or something like that. But yeah, I don't think the, you know, angels are described as being giant in their spiritual form, you know, because I think it's described in like one of the verses in the Bible where they describe the wingspan of an angel being from like 2 city blocks. So if you have a being that is naturally that size, that incarnates into this human form, and then, you know, has relations with a woman, and then that hybrid, yeah, probably that's probably where the giantism comes from them being that size naturally. Because it doesn't really make sense as to why, unless there's another reason, their genetics just cause them to continue to grow and grow and grow. You know, that could be another thing. But I don't think that's the case with Adam.
So the next verse is Acts 24:15, and I have the same hope in God, and these men themselves have, that there will be a resurrection of both the righteous and the wicked. So if death pays for sin, how do you feel about the idea of individuals being resurrected?
Oh, that's, you know, the final judgment. Yeah, that's not something that I really have an argument with, you know. I'm not really certain. I never really got into what the reasoning was behind, you know, everyone being resurrected or coming back, let's just say. So, you know, it's definitely a great question. I don't really have the answer to that one. It's in terms of, and other than that, God's going to make, whatever happened to you. God really didn't really have anything to do with that timely death, or so you'll be able to cycle through and get that final judgment, based on how he reads your heart.
Yeah. Okay, so next one is 2 Corinthians 6:14. Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers, for what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness, and what communion hath light with darkness? How important is it that a partner shares the same belief system as you?
Oh, you won't have that spiritual bond if you don't believe in the same. Sorry to say, if you don't believe in the same deity, if you don't believe in the same spiritual beliefs, that's not going to work. Try it all you want, that's just not going to happen. And there are going to be more and more people who are already like in our lives that are going to convert away from God. So they're going to become, the movement is unworship right now. So we're having a lot of people who are starting to accept satanic and Luciferian concept and ideas, forms of practice, and that's what they're starting to believe. Especially the younger generations who are not being raised we're not being raised in like congregations and churches or with any like type of religious guidance, even within the home. So it's kind of like, well, everyone's left to believe what they want to believe. They're kind of on their own with that for the most part these days. So, when I think once people get to the point where, this day and age, once they have come to that epiphany moment, where they say, okay, I really got to focus on the God instead of being pulled away by my partner or my friend, or a social interaction that may change my viewpoint, because that's what's going to happen. It's just like a repeated thing, because it happened in the beginning where people were just kind of like pulled away. It's like the golden calf scenario. As soon as Moses left, they didn't know what to do, so they just built this idol to worship in the meantime, which is crazy to think about. They were so following the true God, and then all of a sudden, but that's what happens. As soon as the angels left the garden to worship God, that's when Satan had the moment to strike, because that's when she was most vulnerable. And that's when these people will come in and try to pull you out, is when you're most vulnerable. A lot of times when people like lose loved ones, they're in that vulnerable moment where they question God and things like that. So yeah, that's when he'll come in and try to pull you out of that.
Sway
Or
you.
something bad happens to you that could change you mentally, make you rebellious.
Okay, so Revelation 17:16, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. What do you think this means? Many say it's symbolic and represents politics, government turning on religion. Some say it's literal. What do you think? And how can we know the difference between literal and symbolic?
That's difficult. I have trouble with that one myself. I've read through those verses, and to be honest, I don't have the answer for that, because I'm having trouble trying to distinguish what is going to be real and what is just, figuratively speaking. So when you hear when you hear about beasts in the Bible, usually it's some type of power structure. Usually, whenever they're referring to a beast in biblical text, that's usually what they're referring to. That's why it has all these different animal parts, and that's why it has all these different heads and horns and things like that. There are certain creatures described that probably are like real creatures, but whenever they're talking about like a beast, it's mostly like a system, mostly like a beast system we're talking about. So I would lean more towards, yeah, this is probably something political, you know, within the structure of the world we're living in.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, you are to abstain from food sacrificed to idols, from blood, from the meat of strangled animals, and from sexual immorality. You will do well to avoid these things. Farewell. How do you feel? That's Acts 15:29. How do you feel about this verse and what it says about what we must abstain from? And how do you feel about blood transfusions?
Yeah, it's a good question. It all has to do with health. It's just simply health, a matter of health. If you're going to do something that's healthier, yeah, you're going to abstain from it. That's just, you know, it's just simple logic. Like if you are, the healthier choice is not to smoke. The healthier choice is not to have sex. The healthier choice is not to have a blood transfusion. Even if it's just healthier because even after those things occur, you have issues. A lot of people develop, you know, they're just not talked about. So I understand like the whole transfusion thing, the controversy around that, saving your life and things like that. That's an emergency situation. So, you know, I don't really categorize that as, you know, the same as some of these other things, you know what I mean? So that's a matter of life and death, you know, so that depends on the person. But all these other things, yeah, abstinence from eating the wrong types of foods. It's probably a healthier idea to abstain from like eating meat, you know, for some period of time. I personally feel healthier eating meat, so, you know, but to each his own. Yeah, but absolutely. The abstinence part is, you know, just pretty much there to keep you healthy. Like anything God wants us to do is pretty much for our health. It's not because he wants to keep you in this frigid state where you can't do anything. No, it's just that it's not healthy to eat this type of, it's not healthy to eat, you know, an animal with paws. It's just not. Everyone knows that scientifically it's not healthy to eat, or it's not healthy to engage in sexual activities with multiple partners, unprotected, and, you know, all that comes with it. So it's not healthy psychologically. So, you know, it's when God instructs people or recommends people to abstain for these things, because this is about being the ultimate human. It's not about being imperfect, it's about being perfect. And the perfect person has the ability to abstain from these things without any issue and continue to be healthy and live a lot longer than most people.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been amazing as always. Is there anything that you'd like to promote before we leave off? Anything you've got coming up in the new year?
Just tune in to Woodward TV. I'll have everything you need to know there. Just tune in, go to YouTube, go to Woodward TV, and you'll see everything I need you to know right there.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This has been Jay Woodward with me, Mama C. Love to the world. Peace out.
been great to be here. Thank you.